Episode 1. The night the candle split in two. I was the last one in the chapel that night. The kind of silence that presses against your chest filled every corner, broken only by the faint hiss of candlelight. I wasn't there to pray. Not really. I was there because I miss her twin sister, Alara. She'd been gone 10 years. And still, I spoke to her. I lit a single white candle on the altar, the same way I had every year on the anniversary of her death. But this time, the flame didn't burn like it should have. It twisted, stretched, and then, before my eyes, it split cleanly into like the wick itself had divided. The left flame flickered warm and golden. The right burned dark, almost black. My breath caught in my throat. No, this isn't real. I'm imagining it. Then I heard it, a whisper, soft, feminine, familiar. Evelyn. I spun around so fast, I nearly knocked over the candle. No one was there, just the empty pews and the tall wooden crucifix staring down at me. I left nervously, clutching my arms to keep from shaking. This is what grief does to you, I muttered. But then, the whisper came again, louder, clearer. I never left. I frowned. See, my chest tightened. My sister's voice seemed impossible, but unmistakable through the air like smoke. The candlelight swayed violently, throwing shadows across the stone walls. That's when I saw it. In the old mirror at the back of the chapel, my reflection didn't move with me. It stood there, smiling, and that smile wasn't mine. I backed away, but my reflection leaned closer, lips curling in a way I'd never seen on my own face. It lifted its hand slowly and pressed it against the glass from the other side. My breath fogged in the cold air. Alara, I whispered. The mirror trembled, and then it smiled wider. The candle flames but the thing flared high, nearly touching the ceiling. Wax ran down like blood. Finish the prayer, Evelyn, my reflection said. I hadn't prayed out loud, not one word, but when I looked down, the Bible on the altar was open to a page I'd never turned to. Words scrawled in ink that looked far too fresh to be old scripture stared back at me, and beneath them, 3 more words written in red burned themselves into my mind. Say it now. I should have run. I should have blown the candle out, but I didn't, because for the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel alone. Episode 2, the mirror that spoke her name. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? After what I saw in that chapel, by dawn, I convinced myself it was grief, just grief clawing at my mind. But when night came, I found myself back in the same pew, staring at that mirror at the back of the chapel. It was old, cracked along the edges, framed in dark wood that seemed to drink the candlelight. I told myself, if I could just look into it again and see nothing, I'd be free. I was wrong. The air was colder tonight. My breath fogged in front of me as I approached. Every step echoed like I was walking toward my own grave. And then I saw it. Not me, not my reflection. Alara. Her face was pale, wet with tears, or maybe it was water, dripping down her hair as if she'd crawled out from somewhere deep. And her eyes, God, her eyes looked hollow, but they knew me. I reached out. My fingertips trembled as they touched the glass. Alara. My voice cracked like a child's. She smiled, that same terrible smile I saw last night. And, knock. The sound came from inside the mirror. Once, twice, 3 times. My knees almost gave out. Evelyn, she whispered. I should have run. I should have screamed, but I couldn't move. Do you hear me? I asked, my breath barely a sound. Her head tilted, like she was studying me. Then she raised a hand and traced something on the inside of the mirror with her finger. Words bloomed on the glass in a frost I couldn't explain. Pray with me. My chest tightened. I could barely breathe. I didn't want to, but I found myself nodding. I knelt in front of the mirror. My lips trembled as I started to pray the only thing I could remember. Our Father, who art in heaven. But before I could finish, Alara spoke over me. Not the prayer I knew. A different one, darker, older. The glass between us began to crack. Thin lines spread across it like veins. And for a moment, I swore I could feel her breath. Then, just before the last word, her voice changed. It wasn't soft anymore. It wasn't even human. Amen. The mirror went black, and in that silence, something knocked back. Episode 3, the prayer she shouldn't have finished. I didn't go back to the chapel for 2 days. but no matter how far I stayed, I couldn't escape the sound. That knocking, low, measured, like someone wrapping their fingers against the inside of a coffin. It followed me into my dreams, and sometimes I wasn't even sure I was asleep. On the third night, I gave in. I lit a lantern and returned to the chapel, my hands trembling so badly the flame nearly went out. The mirror was waiting, and so was she. Alara's reflection stood there, pale as bone, lips curved in that same unnatural smile, and in her hands, she held a piece of parchment. I don't remember crossing the room. I just remember my fingers brushing against the cold glass, and suddenly, the paper was on my side. I should have dropped it. I should have burned it. Instead, I unfolded it. The words weren't in any language I recognized, but I knew what they meant. I didn't read them. I felt them like someone whispering directly into my skull. Pray it. Alara's voice breathed through the glass. I shook my head. No. The mirror cracked. Just a hairline fracture, running straight down the middle. Pray it, Evelyn, or I'll start knocking louder. The lantern flickered. Behind me, the chapel door slammed shut. So I knelt, and I began. Each word tasted wrong, heavy, like I was swallowing ash. The air in the chapel grew cold enough to burn my lungs, and the candlelight bled red as I spoke. Then I reached the last line. It was short, simple, a single word. I hesitated. Every part of me screamed to stop. But then I heard her. Please, sister, you've missed me, haven't you? And I said it. The instant the word left my lips, the mirror shattered it out. But like it had been swallowed by the dark, the floor trembled beneath my knees. From the cracks in the stone, I heard it, breathing, not mine, not hers, something else. And then a voice, low and hungry, crawling out of the ground. Now, we begin. Episode 4, The Twin in the Pews. That chapel was empty. At least, it was supposed to be. I stood at the doorway, gripping the rusted handle so tightly it cut into my palm. The air inside was still, heavy, like it hadn't been breathed in for centuries. But the moment I stepped over the threshold, I felt it. Eyes, watching. I didn't see her at first. Not until the old bell in the steeple rang 3 sharp chimes, though no one was up there to pull the rope. And then I saw her, sitting in the front pew. Alara. She was wearing the same black dress we buried her in 10 years ago, wet, clinging to her skin, like she'd been pulled out of the ground only seconds ago. Her head tilted slightly, her lips curled in that terrible, knowing smile. Alara. My voice barely left my throat. She didn't answer. She just turned her head slowly like a marionette whose strings had been tangled in the dark. And that's when I noticed her hands, folded in prayer, only they were bleeding. Thin lines of crimson dripped down her pale wrists and pooled on the wood of the pew. Yet she didn't seem to feel it. I took a step closer. The boards groaned beneath my feet. Alara, I whispered again. This time, she spoke. Sit. The sound wasn't human. It was Laerni's sister's voice. But beneath it, something deeper, something that scraped against the bones of the world. I don't know why I obeyed. I should have run, but my legs carried me forward until I sat beside her. The cold coming off her skin was unbearable, but I couldn't stop staring into her face. And then, she reached for my hand. Her fingers were ice, dead, yet when she laced them through mine, I felt a pulse. 2 pulses. Do you remember our prayer, Evelyn? I nodded before I realized I was moving. She smiled wider, and eyes where her teeth looked sharper in the candlelight. Then say it with me. I didn't want to, but my mouth opened, and the words, those same words from the parchment, spilled out again. The pews around us creaked. One by one, I heard footsteps, but no one was there. And then I saw them, figures in the back rows, shadow thin and faceless, kneeling in perfect unison, praying, with her, with me. When the last word left my mouth, Alara leaned closer, her lips brushing my ear. We're not alone anymore. And from the darkness behind the altar, something left. Episode 5, The Grave That Answered Back. The night air was sharp enough to cut. I stood in the cemetery, clutching a rusted shovel so tightly my knuckles burned white. The moon hung low, pale and heavy, like it was watching. Behind me, the chapel bells tolled once, then stopped. Her grave was exactly where I remembered it. Alara, beloved sister, Gone but not forgotten. Except she wasn't gone, was she? I drove the shovel into the dirt. The sound was loud in the silence of the dead. Each strike felt like it echoed forever, like the ground itself was hollow. Halfway down, I hesitated. My breath fought in the cold air, and for a moment, I heard it knocking from below. My stomach turned. I dropped to my knees, pressing my ear to the soil. Knock, knock, knock. Steady, calm, like someone was waiting. Alara. My voice cracked. The knocking stopped. Then, Evelyn, her voice, muffled, coming from the earth beneath my hands. I dug faster, my fingers tearing through the dirt when the shovel wasn't enough. Nails split, skin bled, but I didn't stop until the coffin came into view. Only, it wasn't closed. The lid was broken, jagged pieces of wood pushed outward as if something had climbed out. I stumbled back, heart slamming against my ribs. The grave was empty, and then, behind me, the chapel bell rang 3 times. I turned. Alara stood at the edge of the graveyard, her head tilted, eyes reflecting the moonlight like glass. And she wasn't alone. Shapes moved in the shadows around her bed, crawling things that wore no faces but whispered like a congregation. Alara smiled. You prayed for me, and I answered, though in held, carrying the sin of damn birth and something else sweet, rotting, ancient. I wanted to run. I wanted to scream, but my legs didn't move, because in that moment, I realized something far worse than the empty grave. The voice from the ground. It wasn't hers. Episode 6. The priest who hid the truth. I found him in the rectory, alone, his hands shaking as he lit a fresh candle. Father Calder was older now, his back bent with years of silence. But when he saw me, his face drained of what little color it had left. You shouldn't have gone to her grave, he whispered. I frowned. See, he knew. He'd always known. What did you bury, Father? My voice cracked, sharp enough to cut through the stale air. He stared at me for a long moment before slamming the door shut. The candle flame trembled between us. I didn't bury her, he said. I buried what she became. The words clung to me like ice. You're lying. She was my sister. She wasn't your sister when we put her in the ground. He snapped. His eyes darted toward the crucifix on the wall, as if it might break under the weight of what he was about to say. That night, after she died, we heard her voice in the chapel. Prayers, Evelyn, prayers no priest should understand. My chest tightened. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. We locked the doors, sealed the mirrors, buried her deep because it wasn't her that spoke. It was something else wearing her voice. I shook my head. No, she's back. I've seen her. I have. Father Calder slammed his hand against the altar, and every word you've prayed since then has been feeding it. The room tilted, my breath shallow. Feeding? What? He hesitated. Then he said it. The thing that answered her prayer the night she died. A sound sharp, sudden cut through his words. Knock. We both frowned. See, it came from the confessional. Slow, deliberate, 3 knocks. Father Calder's face went white. She's here. The candlelight bled red. Shadows stretched along the walls, twisting into shapes I didn't want to understand. I turned toward the confessional. The door was slightly ajar. Evelyn, the voice came. My sister's voice. Sweet, familiar. But Father Calder gripped my arm, his fingers digging deep. Don't you open it, he begged. It isn't her. Not anymore. I looked at him, then back at the door. And that's when I saw it through the narrow crack of the confessional. Her smile. Only this time, there were teeth. Episode 7. The confessional that bled. The knocking didn't stop. It came from the confessional, steady and patient, as if whatever was inside knew I wouldn't leave. Father Calder clutched his rosary so hard the bead snapped, scattering like black seeds across the floor. Don't open it, he whispered again, his voice trembling. Once you see her, you'll never stop. But I couldn't look away. The crack in the wooden door was wide enough for me to see a single pale eye staring back at me. My sister's eye. Evelyn. Her voice was soft this time, almost gentle. It's so dark in here. Let me out. My chest tightened. Every memory of her laughter. The nights we stayed awake whispering secrets as kids came flooding back. I reached for the handle. Father Calder slammed his hand over mine. You open that door, and she won't be the only one who comes through. Then it happened. a sound I'll never forget. Drip. I looked down. Thick, dark liquid was seeping from the bottom of the confessional. At first, I thought it was water, but then the smell hit. Metallic, raw, undeniable. Blood. Though it groaned, the air turned colder, heavy with the weight of something ancient. Then, from behind the door, a low laugh crawled out, sharp and hungry. It wasn't Alara's laugh. The confessional shuddered, as if something inside was pushing against it. Splinters cracked, though with straining like it would burst. Evelyn, Father Calder rasped, dragging me backward, back away. Nah, but I didn't move, because in the blood pooling at my feet, I saw eight reflections that weren't mine. Faces twisted in silent screams, down scenes of them. Then, all at once, the knocking stopped. Silence. For a heartbeat, I thought maybe it was over. And then, a voice, not hers, not even close, hissed from the other side of the door. Confess, and we will open. The confessional door creaked, as if inviting me closer. And for one terrible second, I almost wanted to. Episode 8. The altar that burned without fire. The next night, the chapel was darker than I'd ever seen it. No candles, no light from the moon, just a silence so deep it felt alive. Father Calder stood at the door, trembling. He held a brass censer in one hand, the smoke curling from its light blackened fingers. If you follow me inside, he whispered, you don't look at her, no matter what she says. I nodded, but my heart didn't believe him. The moment we stepped in, I saw it. The altar. It was burning, not with fire, no flames, no smoke, just a deep, violent red glow that pulsed like a heartbeat, bleeding out into the pews. The crucifix above it hung crooked, its shadow twisting unnaturally across the walls. And kneeling in front of the altar was Alara. She didn't move, didn't breathe, but I could feel her presence clawing at my skin. She's praying, Father Calder muttered. God help us all. She's still praying. I wanted to run, but I couldn't stop staring. Every time she whispered a word, the altar's glow pulsed brighter. The stone cracked beneath it. The wooden floor groaned like it was rotting in fast forward. Then her head turned. Slow, too slow. Her eyes locked on mine. Evelyn, she breathed, and my name was a wound. You came back? Calder shoved a hand against my chest, forcing me behind him. Don't answer her, he barked, but I couldn't move. Alara smiled. He listens here. Do you hear him? Evelyn, do you hear how loud he's knocking? And then I heard it too. A sound rising from beneath the altar. Not knocking this time. Pounding, desperate and eager, as if something was trapped just below the stone and wanted out. Father Calder swung the censer hard, chanting words in Latin that made my stomach twist. For a moment, the glow of the altar dimmed, but then Alara spoke a single word I didn't understand, and the altar bled. Thick streams of black-red liquid dripped from its edges, soaking into the floorboards. The pounding grew louder. Calder grabbed my arm. If we don't leave now, he hissed, we'll never leave at all. But I couldn't, because as I stared at the altar, I saw something move beneath it. A hand, and it was knocking for me. Episode 9. The hand beneath the altar. It shouldn't have been there. A hand thin, gray, and clawed pressed up through the cracked stone beneath the altar. Its fingers twitched like it was learning how to move again after years in the dark. Father Calder yanked me back, nearly tearing my arm from its socket. Don't look at it, he hissed, but I couldn't stop, because that hand, it wasn't strange. It was familiar. Alara, I whispered. The hand frowned. Then, impossibly, it turned its palm toward me like it was reaching out for my touch. Alara's dead. Calder spat, clutching his rosary. Whatever that is, it's not her. But then came the voice. Sister. It was her voice. Soft, broken, and it came from the cracks in the floor. I stepped forward before I realized I was moving. The altar's glow brightened, spilling across the pews, and for a split second, I saw them, down scenes of shadowed faces in the dark. Watching, waiting. Calder shouted a prayer so loud it nearly drowned out my thoughts. The ground shook. The hand recoiled, and for a moment, I thought maybe it would vanish. But then, it grabbed the edge of the stone and pulled. The sound was unbearable, like bone on bone as the altar split wider, revealing not just one hand, but two, then shoulders, and a head, and I saw her, Alara. Her skin was pale and wet, as if she'd been pulled out of a river. Her eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, and her smile, God, that smile was wrong. You prayed for me, she said, her voice echoing like it was coming from somewhere far deeper than her lungs. Calder raised the crucifix, his hand trembling. Back, Damon, but she laughed. It wasn't cruel, it was tender. You buried me, she whispered, but I didn't stay buried. He wouldn't let me. And then the ground behind the altar cracked open wider. More hands, more voices, a congregation clawing its way up from the earth, whispering my name, Evelyn. They chanted in perfect unison. Calder grabbed me, dragging me toward the door, but before we could leave, Alara called out one last thing, her voice sharper than the bells in the steeple. Don't run, sister. You prayed me back, now pray with me. And every candle in the chapel went out. Episode 10, The Midnight Mass of the Dead. The chapel was silent, not the kind of silence that brings peace, but the kind that feels like a held breath, waiting to snap. Father Calder and I stood frowning at the entrance, staring at the altar. The cracks beneath it had widened into a jagged wound in the stone floor. From that wound, hands and faces pushed upward, pale and damp, their mouths whispering words no living tongue should know. And at the center of it all stood Alara. Her head was bowed, her lips moving in prayer. Each word was a ripple in the air, a vibration that made the wooden pews groan, and the crucifix above the altar tilt lower, as if even Christ himself didn't dare look. Evelyn, Calder whispered, his voice ragged. We leave now, or we die here. But I couldn't move, because Alara raised her head, and for the first time, I saw her eyes clearly. They weren't her eyes at all. They were 1,000 eyes, layered and shifting, watching from behind her face like something looking through a mask. And then, the bell rang. Not once, not twice, but 13 times. The sound was deafening. The walls shuddered, and the pews, God help meth pews, filled. Figures emerged from the shadows, pale and bent, wearing the tattered remnants of burial clothes. Their mouths moved in silent prayer as they sat her down, one by one, like parishioners returning for a service they'd never left. Alara smiled. Mass is about to begin, she said, her voice a chorus of echoes. Won't you kneel, sister? Calder grabbed my arm, but it was too late. My legs buckled. I was on my knees, my hands trembling, as if unseen strings were pulling me down. The congregation of the dead began to chant, Peter Noster, Kies in Kales, but the words twisted, warping into something unholy, syllables that burned in my ears. The altar glowed brighter, bleeding that same black-red light, and from beneath it, something vast shifted. Alara stretched out her hands. Pray with me, Evelyn, she whispered, leaning close enough for her breath cold and damp to touch my cheek. And for one terrifying second, I almost did. But then, Father Calder shouted over the chant, his voice breaking, Don't answer her. The dead turned their heads toward him in perfect unison, and they smiled. Episode 11, The Bell That Rang Backwards. The first toll came like a knife through the air. The second was lower, rung. By the third, I realized what I was hearing. The chapel bell was ringing backward. Its sound didn't rise, it sank, each note dragging us deeper into something that felt older than death itself. The congregation of corpses tilted their heads, their hollow mouths curling in reverence. Alara turned toward me. Do you hear it, sister? She asked softly. It's the sound of the gate unlocking. Father Calder gripped his crucifix so tightly it splintered. That bell hasn't rung since the founding of this church, he rasped. If it's tolling now, it's not for us. The ground quaked beneath us. Dust fell from the rafters, and the altar's bloody glow bled across the walls like a spreading wound. Then, the dead stood, every single one of them. Their movements were perfect, synchronized. As they turned toward the bell tower, even Alara's head tilted up, as if she were listening to a voice I couldn't hear. Evelyn, she whispered, her smile razor sharp. You called me, but he is calling you. I shook my head, stepping back. No, I didn't. The fourth toll silenced me, and this time, I didn't hear it with my ears. I felt it in my bones, in the hollow place behind my ribs. It was pulling, dragging. Calder grabbed my wrist, his eyes wild. We have to stop her before the last toll. If it strikes 13 again. He didn't finish. He didn't have to, but Alara was already walking toward the altar, Her hands were raised, and from the crack in the floor, something vast and unseen pushed upward, its shadow spilling across the ceiling like wings made of ash. The fifth toll rang backward, and then the dead began to pray in reverse. Every word scraped at my mind like claws, peeling away meaning until there was nothing left but sound and hunger. Calder yanked me toward the door, but that chapel stretched, the aisles lengthening as if the building itself wanted to keep us. Alara turned one last time, her 1,000 eyes gleaming. "Don't run, sister," she said sweetly. "When the bell is done, there will be nowhere left to run." And then the sixth toll came. The floor split wide open, and I saw what was knocking. Episode 12, the gate beneath the church. The sixth toll was still echoing when the floor gave way. Stone split like paper, which snapped like bone, and beneath the altar, the wound in the earth gaped open wide enough to swallow the chapel whole. What I saw inside it wasn't darkness. It was movement. Shadows twisted like smoke, and face hundreds of them pressed against an invisible barrier. Mouths open and silent, endless screams, hands clawed upward, desperate to reach us. Father Calder clutched my arm, his lips moving in frantic prayer, but his voice sounded small, drowned out by the low, steady hum rising from the pit. A hum that wasn't sound at all, it was hunger, and standing at the edge of it was Alara. She looked back at me, and for the first time, her smile was almost human. "You brought me home," she whispered. "Now I'll bring him through." "Heretic," Calder roared, lifting his crucifix high, but the glow from the altar surged and burned it black in his hands. He dropped it with a cry. The bell tolled backward again. Seventh, eighth. The dead parishioners fell to their knees in perfect unison, their voices rising in that same reverse prayer. Every word pulled the gate wider. I swear I could feel its breath on my face, hot and cold at once, like standing too close to a furnace buried in ice. "Evelyn," Alara said, her voice trembling with something that almost sounded like joy. "Kneel with me." I shook my head, tears burning my eyes. "You're not my sister." But she laughed at a sound that split into 100 voices. "Then why do you sound like her when you pray?" The ninth toll. The ground lurched. The pew splintered. Calder shoved me behind him, his voice breaking as it began an exorcism so raw and violent, it didn't sound like Latin anymore, just rage. For a moment, the glow faltered, the gate hesitated, but Alara only stepped closer to the pit, and the shadows inside reached for her like children greeting their mother. The 10th toll. "Stop her, Evelyn," Calder shouted. "If it reaches 13, there won't be a church or a world left to save." Alara turned to me, her face softening, and for just a moment, she was my sister again, the girl who used to braid my hair, who sang with me in the old choir loft. "Pray," she whispered, "please." And for the first time, I almost believed her. The 11th toll rang, and the gate groaned open wider, and then something inside it looked at me. Episode 13, the thing that wears her face. The 11th toll hadn't stopped echoing when I saw it. At first, I thought it was Alara. Her shape, her height, even the tilt of her head was perfect. But then it moved. Wrong, like a shadow pretending to be human. It climbed out of the pit with deliberate grace, stepping onto the altar as if it had every right to stand there. And when it turned toward me, I saw my sister's face stretched across it like a mask too tight, too smooth, and smiling in a way Alara never did. "Evelyn," it whispered. No, it wasn't a whisper. It was 100 whispers, all at once, crawling under my skin. Father Calder stumbled backward, clutching his burned hands, his rosary swinging uselessly. "That's not her," he rasped. "It's the one she opened the gate for." But it laughed, sweet, musical, and horribly wrong. "She prayed me here. She asked for me." I shook my head, backing away. "You're lying." Its eyes, too many, flickering just beneath her skin, shifted and focused on me. "Am I? Or did you pray harder than she did?" The 12th toll rang, and every corpse in the chapel fell prostrate, faces pressed to the floor like obedient children. The shadows in the pit quivered with anticipation. Calder grabbed my shoulder. "We ended before the 13th, he said, his voice cracking. "If that bell strikes again." But the thing wearing Alara's face raised his hand, and the bell silenced. The world stopped. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even hear my heartbeat. Only its voice remained. "Evelyn," it said softly, tilting its head. "Come closer. I kept her for you." And then, for a single, unbearable second, I saw Laramie reel inside its eyes. Trapped, screaming, I stepped forward. Calder shouted my name, but it was far away now. The world was only that face, that voice, and the endless pull of the gate. I can't give her back, it murmured. Just pray, and God help me. I almost opened my mouth. Almost. But then Calder shoved a hand between us, pressing a relic, an old, rusted crucifix against its chest. The thing shrieked, its voice splitting the air like shattered glass. For the first time, it looked afraid. The silence broke. The bell began to toll backwards again, and the 13th was coming. Episode 14, the 13th toll. The air in the chapel shattered. The crucifix in Father Calder's hand burned brighter than the altar itself, searing the flesh from his palm. But he didn't let go. The thing wearing Alara's face recoiled, its smile twisting into something jagged and hungry. And then, the bell began to toll. The 12th had been dreadful. The 13th was unbearable. It rang backward, low and guttural, like the sound of stone grinding against bone. The walls shook, the pews split, and every corpse in the congregation lifted its head at once. Their hollow mouths opened, and for the first time, they screamed. Not in pain, in worship. The thing turned its many eyes toward me, ignoring Calder's burning relic. It spoke my name like a promise. Evelyn, and I saw Lara again, flickering inside its gaze, her face pale and terrified, as if she were pounding on glass I couldn't break. Stop it, I screamed. Let her go. The creature laughed. Its voice was the sound of doors unlocking in places no door should exist. Why would I? She prayed for me. And you are about to join her. Calder shoved me back and roared a prayer that sounded less like salvation and more like defiance. The relic in his hand pulsed, and for one brief second, the gate faltered. Nothing held, its voice splitting into 1,000 jagged notes. But then the 13th toll struck. Everything stopped. The dead frowned mid-scream. The shadows in the pit turned still, like a sea waiting for the tide. The world exhaled, and the gate opened. Not wide, not yet, but enough. From that darkness, something emerged. Not a hand, not a face, something vaster. Its shape was wrong, shifting in ways my mind couldn't follow. Its presence alone made the candles die out and the crucifix in Calder's hand crumble into ash. The thing wearing Alara's face bowed its head. He comes, it whispered, and in that silence, Alara's voice, her real voice, echoed in my mind for the first time. Evelyn, run. But the doors of the chapel slammed shut, and the darkness stepped closer. Episode 15, the prayer that ends the world. The 13th toll faded, but its echo clung to the ear like smoke. The gate stood wide open now, a wound in the earth that bled shadows and whispers. And from it, the thing that wasn't my sister, wearing her face like a mask, smiled with infinite patience. Father Calder was on his knees, clutching the charred stump of what was once his crucifix. He looked at me, eyes raw with terror. Evelyn, he rasped, if you pray now, it will hear you. I can't, I whispered, because I was trembling, because I wasn't ready. But then I saw her, Alara, not the thing, not the monster, my sister trapped behind its eyes, pounding against the glass of her prison, screaming my name without sound. And I knew, if I didn't pray, she would be lost. And if I did, I might damn us all. The creature stepped closer, its many eyes shifting under her skin like maggots beneath flesh. Its voice was a hymn turned inside out. Pray, Evelyn, end this world, and I'll give her back. The congregation of the dead knelt lower, their bones creaking like broken pews. Even the shadows in the pit seemed to lean closer, as if holding their breath. And then I prayed, not to God, not to the thing. I prayed to Alara. Come back, I whispered. Come back to me, before the world breaks. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then, the chapel shuddered, the altar cracked, and the thing wearing her face screamed. Its smile split wide enough to tear its skin. Alara's hands pushed from inside it, clawing their way out, and with one final, impossible cry, my sister ripped herself free. The gate convulsed, the shadows shrieking like wind through a graveyard. Calder shouted a prayer so fierce it sounded like fire. The creature stumbled, its stolen face collapsing into black ash. But it wasn't over. The darkness inside the gate moved. It wasn't retreating, it was reaching. Alara grabbed my hand, her voice hoarse but steady. "Pray with me," she said, as oh, we did, together. Our voices rose in Latin, not in any holy tongue, gave you in something older, something that came from blood and memory. And for one fleeting moment, the gate closed. That chapel fell silent. The dead were gone. The altar was nothing but rubble. Alara collapsed against me, breathing hard, and whispered, "It's not over. One day, it'll ring again." I held her tighter. "Then we'll be ready." And somewhere, in the stillness, the bell gave a single, quiet, backward chime.
Epilogue, the echo that never stopped. The world was quiet for the first time in what felt like centuries. The chapel was nothing but ruins now, stone and wood shattered. The altar split in two like a corpse left too long in the sun. Father Calder stood beside us, trembling, bloodied but alive. And Alara, she was real. Flesh, bone, and breath. No more masks. But I could still hear it. The bell. Faint. Almost gentle. One backward chime. So soft it could have been my imagination, except it wasn't. Alara's fingers dug into mine. "You hear it too?" she whispered. I nodded. Calder knelt before the ruins of the altar, whispering prayers that felt more like apologies. He didn't look at us. He didn't have to. We all knew what it meant. The gate hadn't closed. Not completely. Alara turned to me, her face pale but calm, as if she'd accepted it already. "It won't stop," she said. "That sound, it's inside us now." I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to pretend that we had one. But then I felt it, a tiny vibration in my chest. Like a hidden heartbeat that didn't belong to me. A heartbeat counting backward. I looked at Alara, and in her eyes, I saw it too. The echo. A shadow that hadn't left. "Evelyn," she said softly, her voice trembling but steady. "Next time, it won't be the bell that rings first." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't need to. Because somewhere, far below the rubble, I heard it again. Chime. Backward. Like a promise. And this time, it wasn't waiting for us to pray.